Hello, we are beginning Unit 9, which is our applying percents unit, and this lesson is on percent of a number. In this lesson, and as we move forward, we want to make sure that we understand that of is going to mean multiply and is means equal. So if we're solving the percent of a number, the steps are writing the percent as a decimal and then multiplying. So if we look at find 5% of 300, of, which we just said, means multiply. And our first step here is writing the percent as a decimal. So we're taking a part of 300. We're taking 5% of it. So a small percent of 300. So we're taking a part of, like my whole is 300, my percent is 5, and we want to find the part. So we write 5% as a decimal. Remember, if I go over here, remember when we change a percent to a decimal, if there's not a decimal in the percent, we add it right after the number. We go 2 to the left and then put in zeros. So 5% is the same as 0.05, which is 5/100, times 300, because the of means times, and then we keep 300 the same. So if I put that in my calculator, 0.05 times 300, I get 15. So 5% of 300 is 15, which makes sense. 5% is a small percent. 15 is a small part of 300. So here's a bunch of examples that we're going to do, or that I'm going to go through, and you can pause the video at any time and come back and check all of your answers to make sure they're correct. But first we're going to do 10% of 50. So we're going to take 10% and write it as a decimal, which is 0.10, because we go 2 to the left. Of means multiply, 50, and then we're going to make it equal to x. So we would say 10% of 50 equals x, or 10% of 50 is x, or is whatever number we're trying to find. Okay? If we just think about this on the side really quick, if we multiply anything by 1/10, remember, all we're doing to our number, so 50 is moving my decimal 1 to the left. It's the opposite. If we multiply by 10, we add a 0. If we multiply by 100, we add 2 zeros, because we're moving the decimal to the right, 1 to the right, 2 to the right, depending on the zeros. So this is opposite. So 10% of any number is just moving the decimal 1 to the left. So 10% times 50 is going to be 5. And if I put that in, 0.10 times 50, I get 5. Okay? Another example, 40% of 120 is just going to be the same as 10% of 120 and times it by 4, because 40% is 10% times 4, right? So 10% of 120 it just means that I'm going to take my decimal here, go 1 to the left, and I get 12 times 4 would get me 48. And if I check that, 0.40 times 120, I get 48. Okay, 35% of 90. So 35% is going to be written as 35/100 times 90 equals x. Okay, my percent is 35%, writing it as a decimal. 90 is what I'm taking the percent of, so that's my whole of the equation. And then x is the part. That's whatever is going to be what the percent of 90 is. So then we just do 0.35 times 90, and we get 31 and a half, or 31 and 5/10. 37 and 5/10% of 16 is what number? So just because there's a decimal in the percent doesn't mean it's already written as a decimal. It's still in percent form. So I still go 2 to the left. I have 0.375 times 16 equals x. 0.375 times 16 is 6. So x equals 6. And then we have 82.5% of 400. So what is 82.5% of 400? So we could say x is, or equals, 0.825 times 400. Because I wrote that as a decimal. Of is my multiply, and then 400. 0.825 times 400 is going to get me 330. And we always want to stop and make sure that it makes sense too. 82.5% is really close to 83%, which is quite a big portion of what we're finding of 400. So, and I know it's a lot bigger than 50%. 50% of 400 would be 200. So I know my number has to be a lot bigger than 200. 80% is pretty closer to 100% of 400 than not. So that makes sense that it would be 330. Okay, and then our last one for this page, what is 0.25% of 900? So this is less than 1% of 900, which means my answer is going to be very, very small compared to 900. So let's write that as a decimal, 0.0025, because we go 1, 2 times 900, 0.0025 times 900 gets me 2 25 hundredths. When we're finding a percent greater than 100, we do the exact same steps. Change the percent to a decimal and multiply. It's just that our answer is going to be greater than the number that we're taking the percent of. So 120% of 75, my answer is going to be greater than 75. I know 100% of 75 would be 75, so we need to find, so my answer is going to be bigger than that. Okay? So I'm going to take 120% and write it as a decimal. So my decimal starts 0 and goes 2 to the left, and I get 1.20 times 75. So I'm going to do 1.2 times 75, and I get 90. 120% is the same as 100% plus 20%. 100% of 75 is 75. 20% of 75 would be like 10% of 75 times 2. 10% of 75 would be 7.5 times 2 would be 15. So then we would get 90. So we can also break up our percents that way. 150% of 20. So we would take 1.5, because we go 2 to the left, times 20, and I know that 1.5 times 20 equals 30. And we can also think of it this way, 100% of 20 is 20, 50% of 20 is 10, add 20 plus 10 together and we get 30. And then 160% of 35, so this again is going to be, my answer needs to be greater than 35, so it would be 1.6 times 35. If I do 1.6 times 35, I get 56. Okay, my last slide, refer to the graph, which says survey results, of number of televisions in-house. If 275 students took the survey, how many can be expected to have 3 televisions each in their houses? So I'm going to look right here, and it tells me that 23% of the students have 3 televisions each in their houses. So I'm going to take 23% of 275 equals X. So that will be whatever the answer is, or that's the part, right? The whole is 275 because that's everyone. We're taking 23% of it. So we write that as a decimal, 0.23, my goodness, times 275. We get 0.23 times 275 equals 63 and 25 hundredths students. We could leave it like that because that's like the average. Otherwise, we could round it down and we could say about 63 students out of the amount surveyed have 3 TVs in their house. That's all I have. Have a great day.